Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and I'm excited to be talking to you today about AI capabilities and especially how to understand how strong they are, how much they need to be developed. And basically, I'm going to be talking about a generative AI maturity model. So, this is so important because as you are pulling together your generative AI strategy, one of the questions becomes, can we actually do it? So that's what I want to talk about today is how do you figure out what is feasible, what isn't feasible, what are the things that you have to put in place to be able to close various gaps. So to get started today, I would love for you to share where you're coming from, say hello, and also share how you're assessing your generative AI capabilities. And in particular, how are you mapping those skills and capabilities you have against the strategic initiatives that you are trying to put in place? We've been talking a lot about how do you actually put a strategy together, but once you understand like these are the high level things we want to be able to do, can we actually pull it off? And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. It's, again, Taste Sufi, Graham, thank you for saying hello. I'm glad you love these videos. I'm glad you find them helpful. So again, please say hello. Would love to just say hello back to you. And also just share how are you looking at your capabilities and developing a plan of how to improve them so that you can actually execute on your generative AI initiatives. So I have some slides here today to share with you. The first thing is this. Again, this question. Now that we have a strategy, can we actually execute it? And sometimes we oftentimes will if I say this is what we can do, so this is what our strategy is going to be. Again, I think it's so important to figure out your overall vision of what you see for your business, decide where you're going to play, how you're going to win, and then assessing and developing the skills and capabilities needed to execute on that strategy. Oftentimes we say, well, this is what we're capable of, and so we're going to determine what our strategy is based on our existing capabilities and skills. And I think that's the wrong way to be thinking about it. And instead to say, if this is our aspiration, if these are the things we could imagine us doing, then how do we develop the skills? Where are the gaps? How do we even understand what skills and capabilities we have to be able to go and execute and develop these initiatives? So that's what I want to talk about today, because I think sometimes we look at generative AI and we say, there's so many things we don't know, so we can't do any of these things, versus saying, we see that the value, which is what I talked about 2 weeks ago, about the value flywheel created by generative AI, and we see the potential value that can be created for our business strategy. Now, how do we develop the skills? What are the gaps in the places where we need to develop? And that's what I want to talk about today. So the very first thing I do want to say is how to use this model. First of all, I'm going to take you through 5 elements of this model, 5 areas. And then you want to develop and understand the major gaps in those areas. And then for each gap, decide whether you're going to build, buy, or partner. And we'll talk about that later. And then you basically are prioritizing what you do first, second, and third in your roadmap. Based on what are these capabilities you want to develop first, second, and third, and also which ones impact multiple initiatives that you want to do. So if you can get more bang for the buck in terms of developing a particular capability or skill, then you want to prioritize those first. And next week, we'll be talking about how to pull all of this together into a strategic plan and the execution plan in particular for the next 18 months. So that's for next week. And so let me start going through, and let me just put into here also where the slides are. I put them into comments, but for whatever reason, it never posts onto LinkedIn. So you can get the slides at bit.ly/CLI-AI-capabilities. And if someone would be so kind as to throw it into LinkedIn, so that's in the comments and it's easy for people to see, copy and paste, I would really appreciate that. So I just want to see, okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for doing that. And let's see, let me go on and talk about what these capabilities are. So these are the 5 areas that I think is so important for organizations to know where they stand in relation to generative AI and to develop a plan on how to basically improve in each of these areas. And I'm going to go into each of them in much greater detail. So, but they are skills and workforce development, there's leadership and culture, there's processes and operational models, data readiness, of course, and then, of course, the technology stack and integration. Notice that this is not only about technology, it's not only about data. It is about all these different elements that are needed to make your generative AI strategy a success. And I would put people skills and the workforce capabilities at the very top here, because in many ways, that's the hardest one to get going. So I think it's so important to start with that, and I'll go into that in a second. So thank you, Tace, who's coming in from Miami, for posting up the link for the slides. And hi, Giant, coming in from Mumbai, India. It's really late there. So thank you for joining. Let's see, let me go back into the slides, and I'll take the first area, which is, okay, first of all, I do want to talk about the way I've been establishing this is to look at each of these 5 areas and 4 maturity levels. And again, this is a standard maturity model. You have basic, where there's basically minimal capabilities. Emerging, there are some capabilities. Established, these are, they're working. They're getting integrated. They're supporting multiple initiatives. And advanced, it's a really high level of sophistication. So as I go through these areas, I'm going to break down each of the areas and just show you what advanced looks like. I'm going to show you what great looks like for each of these. And the ways that I've been working with organizations is to basically understand what these capabilities look like, understand where the biggest gaps are. In particular, if things aren't at least at the established level, then there needs to be some work done to shore up that particular area. And here's the thing, there's no single magic bullet that you can fire off and make these things just happen. These things take a long time to develop. Sometimes they are talking about things that are really hard to change, like culture. So again, these are not necessarily areas that you can snap a finger. There's no magic wand that you can wave to overnight make these things happen. So I think it's very important then to understand where you are and develop plans and put them into your strategy plans to say, how are we going to develop these really important capabilities? And also the timeline, and to figure out when these capabilities will come online to be able to support your initiatives. All right, let's get into it. The first area is skills and workforce development. And so this area is looking at 3 particular capabilities. Let me go through each one of them. The first one is the skills availability. Do your employees have the required technical and strategic skills to support AI initiatives? And here, what really good looks like is your workforce knows how to use AI, and there's continuous training and development to make sure that their skills are up to date. Now, I know for the most part, very few organizations have comprehensive training for their workforce to be able to know how to use AI, and also have very specific training that updates those skills on a role-based on a role basis. So again, are there people available for doing those to actually execute this? And then part of that is the training, the second area, the workforce training programs. Are there formal training programs in place? Again, these may be developed internally. You may be outsourcing them and partnering with various providers, people like Coursera or LinkedIn Learning. Again, providing various types of training and especially certification. And then finally, do you have a way to access external talent when you need it? Again, things are changing so quickly. So is there a strategy for being able to access, again, through partnerships or through contracting, the skills that you need on short notice? And again, having an extensive talent network, being able to integrate them back into the project teams is an essential skill. So that's the first area, which is skills and workforce development. I think it's so important, because if you don't have people who understand how to use AI, how to deploy it, how to think about it, and not just know how to use it, but how to think strategically about it, it is very, very difficult to continue to execute on your initiatives. All right, let me go on to the next area, which is leadership and culture. So, the first and most important thing is your leadership aligned on what you want to do with AI? And so, do they understand the value of generative AI? And do they actively support its adoption? And this is across the board. And what that looks like is there are leaders who are championing AI and are driving transformation. They're not just standing back and say, IT will take care of this. They are leading from the front, they're role modeling it, they're using the AI themselves, and again, understand the strategic implications of this to drive transformation. The second thing is an innovation mindset inside the culture of the organization. Does the organization foster a culture of experimentation, innovation? And I want to focus on the experimentation part of it. Because when this is really strong, when it's really well developed, what it looks like is there is a culture that is proactively innovative. It is constantly looking for new ways to do the existing things. And that there are not only this mindset to do it, but there are processes that support change. Oftentimes, and I'll talk about this more in the process, which is the next section, oftentimes processes are there to stop innovation. And I find that organizations that have a very strong culture for innovation have processes that support innovation. And again, ways to just pilot new ideas without a lot of overhead, with guardrails in place. That's what innovation looks like. And then finally, the third area is change management capability. So, how effective is the organization at just managing change, thinking about change? Is there a lot of change fatigue inside the organization? Or does the organization go from one change to the other pretty seamlessly? So, strong change management capabilities, boarding on into transformation capabilities, and that is deeply integrated into the strategy. So that's leadership and culture. And I think oftentimes, again, I've been in the digital transformation space now for 15 years. And the number one thing that determines the success of a transformation effort is leadership and culture. So again, I think that's such an important thing to be able to be thinking about. All right, let's see. And Taz has this. Taze has this one comment. There are leaders resisting it as well, which is exactly the point why leadership and culture is so important. Because if everyone is aligned and says this is what AI is going to be capable of doing, there's education for them again through skills and workforce development, and people understand that this is how you can use AI, why it's beneficial. They don't fear it, and leadership across the board is aligned on the AI strategy. That's where leadership and culture really is strong and supportive of what everything that you're doing. All right, let me go on to the next area, which is processes and operational models. So the first area is process flexibility. Are your current processes adaptable? And what I mean by that is, can they be adapted to new AI workflows? So what AI does oftentimes is it's starting to automate things. It's being an additional augmentation to human workers. And so can you adapt these processes fairly quickly? Or are they so set in stone that it takes a huge command from the top levels of the organization to change a process? So this adaptability is extremely important. And so do you have, again, what really, really good looks like in the advanced models is when the processes are very adaptive and they have built-in AI capabilities, meaning that you're already starting to build AI into the workflows. And so as new capabilities come online with AI, it's quite simple to implement them too as well. The second area is cross-functional collaboration. Now, what we find is that it's rare that an AI capability or AI initiative comes in and only impacts one department. And so it's very important to have cross-functional collaboration to make sure that people are collaborating really well on these AI initiatives. And that's not the way most organizations work. We have silos because it streamlines communications, it makes people focus and optimize around one set of activities. And when AI comes along, it starts blowing apart all those departmental silos. So this is a key area is, can you pull together these project teams? can teams work cross-functionally and effectively with each other, and find that each of the departments are also supportive of them. Then, when you have agile frameworks, is the organization using agile frameworks to deploy and support AI development? And again, if you have agile frameworks already in place, you are so far ahead of the game, because AI really requires that you try something, see if it works. If it doesn't come back, reconfigure what you want to do, try it again. It is so early on in the AI space. And so experimentation, agility, adaptability are all very, very important. All right, so let's see. Let me take a look at this. Jay has a really good point here. An organization might have multiple threats with diverse levels of maturity. Speed, adaptability, and change readiness may determine AI initiatives. Absolutely. And I'll talk about this at the end, Jay, because I think it's important to understand that it's sort of a synergistic. You think about the initiatives you want to have and you want to do, and then you say, well, do we have the capabilities to do them? And then you say, based on these capabilities, we can do these initiatives. So I think, again, there's a point of determination between these two, but at the same time. So if you find like there's an initiative that we really want to do, but we are at least a year away from even beginning to do a pilot because of the lack of capabilities, that's really good to know. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do that. It means that it will be a year before you can do that. So let's build to that point where we can actually accomplish that initiative. So it is such a huge dose of reality into your strategic planning to say, what can we actually do or not? All right, let me get through the other two areas, and then we'll start closing out. The first one here is on data readiness and governance. So it's like data everywhere, but there's nothing we can use. Kind of the analogy of water everywhere, nothing to drink. And so data quality and availability is extremely important, because if you put junky data into an AI model, you're going to get junky results. So is the data accessible? Can you actually get access to it through APIs or whatever other plugs you want to put into the data? Is it of high quality? And also, very importantly, is it well managed? And what I mean by that is, are there safeguards? Are there clear ways to be able to understand the quality of a data over time? And so, in other words, really advanced organizations to do this say data is a strategic asset that they treat very carefully and are investing in it and are continuously making sure that the quality stays at a high level. I talked to one CEO and they said, we are looking at our initiatives and we're looking at our data. And when we have data that's ready to go, that's high quality, we're greenlighting those initiatives first. So we're trying to find the most strategic ones with the best quality, find the match between them, and greenlight those areas. And so there's always a disconnect sometimes. There's a very important strategy initiative that you may want to do. The data is a mess. So how much time and energy are you going to put into investing in that data? Versus here's a smaller initiative, the data is ready to go. Do we take that cycle now and push that initiative forward? So these are strategic choices that you have to make. One decision isn't necessarily better than the other, but at least you're giving yourself some data points now to make those strategic decisions. Governance frameworks are very, very important. And so we have talked in the past about the need for responsible and ethical AI. And so here, this is, again, being able to say to people, this is where the data is, who has access to it, what can you do with it, who can do what with it, and making sure that those permissions and that training and that mindset, those guardrails are in place and that people understand it is extremely important. So proactive governance, anticipating where problems may be coming up, and then also anticipating how that governance will need to change over time is, again, what really, really good data governance looks like. So the last area I want to talk about, just looking to see if there are any questions or comments. All right, we don't have any. If you have any questions, any comments about this model, please let me know, especially if you think something's missing. Again, we're still researching and developing it. These assessments are based on actual real cases that we have worked with either just in our research or directly with clients. And so, or again, in Katya's case, where she's actually done it herself. So these are still, again, a work in progress here. All right, let me talk about the last area, which is technology. So the first one is just your IT infrastructure. Is your data, your infrastructure scalable and compatible with generative AI tools? And what I mean by this is that can AI get access to them? Many organizations today are still paying what is called IT debt. So there's a debt of backlog of initiatives that you have to do to be able to do things like integrate with generative AI. And so, again, there's that debt, that technical debt that you may have to pay. But at the same time, what are the most important systems to make sure that you can do things, which is the next era, AI tool integration? Because being able to seamlessly integrate with AI platforms is extremely important to be able to, again, integrate AI into the processes and operational models. I think you begin to see like how these areas are all overlapping. You need to have an agile culture to be able to think about processes that are hopefully adaptable, and then data that's really good quality, and technology that can actually support all of this. The infrastructure is there to be adaptable and flexible. And so this last area of scalability and flexibility is not only that it's flexible, but you can scale it, meaning that once you put it in place, you can continue to use this, and it actually gives you scaling features that you can do things better and faster now because of the initial platform investments that you've made. So we'll be talking in greater detail in a few weeks about the technology stack, and in particular, how to make it as flexible as possible. One of the most important things is people ask me, so which model should we be using? Which one should we be building around? And our point is that you can pick a particular type of model, but you want to be extremely flexible so that you can take a new model that may work better for you and plug in and remove the old one and plug that new one in, and to be able to do the things you need to have. And so all those hooks you have into your organization, our best practices are to make it really flexible so that if a new model comes along, you can put it right there and you can redirect all the requests and responses coming out of that through that particular model, and not have to do a lot of work on the infrastructure side of things to be able to just try a new model, plug it in, and see if it works. So those are some of the key points I wanted to make today. And I do want to show you just an example of what happens when you do these assessments. So these are the 5 areas. We go do an assessment. It's much more detailed than just those couple of questions that I talked about. And you can come out with a score on a scale of 1 to 5. And so, I'm sorry, it should be 4. So this is just a hypothetical example to say, again, based on where you see these numbers coming, and then you can see over time also how it's changing, getting better, or hopefully not getting worse. One thing I do want to talk about is how to use this in one particular area, and that is this step. For each gap, decide whether to build, buy, or partner. And what I mean by that is oftentimes we say we can sometimes build some of these capabilities, but sometimes we're going to have to go out there and buy or partner. And my strong recommendation is that you learn to build, and you use building in order to buy and in order to partner. And let me explain what that means. I was speaking with one organization. Again, they're not a technology company. In fact, they're in education. And they said, we are in the process of having a very small team build these things. And we know that in the end, we're not going to be successful at building. But the reason we're building right now is that we know that in 12 months, we're going to have to buy. And we're using our experience to build to know how to buy better. So if they were just to wait for 12 months from now or start doing the things without getting their hands dirty, they're dependent on the technology providers to tell them, well, this is how it all works. And instead, they're going to the technology provider to say, we want to build this. We want to have this capability. Our experience is that this is really hard in terms of integrating with us. What do you got? What have you got to be able to help us do this? And as an informed buyer, as an informed partner, you are going to be so much better off if you have mucked with all that messiness and learned how to learn what are the biggest challenges for you as an organization so that you can take that information and put it into the requirements that are being written for your, again, if you're buying or you're partnering. Again, I can't emphasize how important that is because right now it oftentimes feels like, well, we don't know what's going on. We're going to turn to the experts to tell us how to do things. And yes, they know a lot, but they need you to know quite a bit too as well. So again, I've talked oftentimes about how important it is to train at least the top two levels of your leadership to understand what AI can do, to think about its capabilities, also know its limitations, and to get in there and build some of these tools, use them, and be able to understand what are the gaps again inside the organization and what do you want this technology to do for you. Is again, I'm resigned to the fact that we are never going to be able to build everything in house. And frankly, you shouldn't. And so, knowing, putting a little bit of development effort into building so that you can understand just how it works. And this is the interesting thing. It's getting easier and easier with each passing day to do things that in the past were extremely hard. So being able to attach data, being able to write custom algorithms to be able to check things, being able to actually create avatars, for example, pretty much off the shelf and make them work for you is pretty amazing. But then that also gives you the capabilities to go and ask for more from your partners. I'll just give you an example. When I was working with, again, creating an avatar, I went onto most of the platforms and tried all of them myself. And so when I sat down to work with Simulus AI, I was able to say, well, I like this. I can't do this. This is what I want in my avatar. And I also knew what its limitations were. So I wasn't asking for things that were unrealistic, but also were pushing the edge. So this is, again, being a smart buyer, being a smart partner is extremely important. All right. I just want to just put out the information again. If you would like to stay in touch with me, this is the information. Let me get rid of this banner so you can see it. It's the same information there. But I also want to put out my email, my contact information if you have particular questions. All right. I'm looking here to see if there are any other questions here. Just want to say hi to Faburama, who's coming in from Gambia, West Africa, Giant from Mumbai, as I said before. I think that's it for now for the comments. I do want to share just a few other quick things coming up. Next week, I'll be talking about how to pull all these things together into an 18-month strategic plan. And I've talked about this 6-quarter walk in the past. And people have been asking me, so how do you actually put that thing together? You've got your initiatives, you got your capabilities. How do you put this roadmap together quarter by quarter? And then how do you manage that plan? So I'll be going into that in much greater detail. Again, this is all information. I think that is so important for you to put together a very intentional and strategic generative AI strategy. I encourage you to, again, get your hands dirty, get into this stuff. And I'm looking forward to the conversation next week about how to build the 18-month plan. But I do want to say, again, if you see something in this capabilities model, this maturity model that I'm missing or that needs to have greater highlighted information, please reach out to me. I would love to hear your opinion. Again, we're still developing a lot of these ideas, putting the final dots and dotting the I's and crossing the T's in the book to try to make it all come together. So again, thank you so much for joining today, and I wish you all the best and hope to see you next week. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.